Okay, and welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide. And today we have a very special guest and very special episode. We have Ryan Edelson from Adapting Social. And Ryan has decided to interview me on my show, as he had brought up some really good questions when we met a few weeks back. And I said, why not record an episode, have a conversation, as Ryan had some really great questions that most people probably have the exact same questions. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today because I definitely do have a lot of questions for you.
That's awesome. No, I'm looking forward to it. And some of the questions in my career, never the wording, the terminology. I'm like, you know what? That's some great points. You got me thinking because a couple weeks ago when we last met, and I said, you know what? We definitely have to record this. So before we dive in and you start interviewing me, which is pretty cool for a change, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Awesome, definitely. So my name is Ryan Edelson. I work for a marketing company called Adapting Social. We work with Giuseppe.
Yeah, let us. What are some questions? Obviously, I know the questions you had asked me a couple of weeks ago, but what questions do you have as someone that's never owned a franchise? And questions that maybe the common person has, which would just be a really good exercise here.
Of course. So my first question is something that I notice you often say, do you want to invest in a franchise? And is that the same as opening a franchise? Because I would think, what I assume you're doing is, open a franchise. So let's say I wanted to, open this business or that business, you would probably help me find the right one. But am I actually opening this myself, or am I just putting money into the business? How does this work?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because after we had this discussion, I was thinking about it over the weekend, and I use the term invest. I don't use as much the word open, but the way I describe it, they do mean the exact same thing. And to your point, we are helping people open, essentially. We're helping people with that vehicle to get them to where they want to be. So that vehicle may be a business that happens to be a franchise, and that franchise provides them with the time and financial freedoms and things like that. So when we're talk about it in the book, talk about it on the show, investing and opening are relatively the same thing. These are existing franchises. So you're investing or opening a franchise in a proven business model. So yes, and to your point, can be a little not misleading, confusing, I should say, in that, am I investing in the actual franchise itself, just like a stock, or am I actually active? And yes, we are.
So
looking at a Subway.
It would still be fair to say then, to open a franchise,
yes,
it would be interchangeable.
All right. Yes. Awesome. Now that I had time to think about it, yes.
Okay, I understand now. Yep. Okay. So then my next question to you is, I love how you often say on your social media and on your website, escape the corporate rat race. So how is it? It almost sounds a little, how do I explain? But it's a little confusing to me. I'm like, oh, is this like a pyramid scheme? How is this exactly going to work?
Right. So when we talk about escaping the corporate rat race, we're talking about people that are just, as from personal experience, someone that worked a corporate job, felt like I was a number, and didn't really feel like I had any control of my future, didn't feel like, I was limited, maybe based off my manager or one of my 20 managers, as to the future, my earnings in the company and potential and things like that. So when I work with people, just to be very clear, my book and franchise and podcast are called Franchise Freedom.
Right.
But we are not pushing that vehicle or that avenue to anyone. We are simply helping people figure out, is business ownership the right fit for you? And if it is, right, that's it. That's the vehicle. Is it franchising? Is it a proven, tested business model, or is it a startup? And the $1 million answer, and I'll answer on this show, is which is better. And if I could do a drum roll, I got to get a sound effect machine. It doesn't really make a difference to me. And there is no right or wrong answer. It depends on what you are looking for. And we talk about business owners. And just to be clear, this is one vehicle. A vehicle is a car, right? You take a car to various destinations, and you can have 10 vehicles. You can have a franchise. That's vehicle one. You can have a startup. Maybe that franchise got you motivated and went back into your Word document and said, you know what, I'm going to really take advantage. I have some capital, some cash flow. I want to, this business plan that's been sitting on my laptop or my Mac as you're trying to convert me over to Apple. Maybe the avenue, and that's what helps me start that up. It could be stock trading, stock investing. It could be licensing. So
let me jump in for a second. What
Sure.
I want to know is, like, when you say escape the corporate rat race, like, Are you actually helping someone? Like, you are going to say, like, we are going to get you out of that job and you are going to open this business. Like, you actually can. I'm going to help you. Like, I'm going to walk you through this. Like, they will get out of that job and you will be able to help them open a franchise.
Yes.
Or invest in a franchise.
Yes, figure out and potentially open or invest in a franchise. Yeah, so it's step by step. This is not something I learned in a book or spoke with a smart person over the years. This is something I went through myself. So we walk you step by step, which you can learn from a blog post. But what I really truly provide is making the case if you wanted to explore a business, figuring out why, but telling you exactly what happens along the way. So you could do all the research on funding and the franchise, but how does it feel maybe to not be able to pay yourself? Maybe you were making six figures and now month one, you're not paying yourself. How do I position myself? How much money do I need in the bank? How many months or years living expense do I need? So I've walked the walk. I talked the talk. I've been there. I've done that. So I can really help you every step of the way in order to make that best decision. But ultimately, that decision's up to you to make. And we also talk about, employment is also a risk, right? So people think of business.
When you say risk, actually, that was my next question. I want to say, how high is the risk? Like, if I was to say, you know what, I'm going to take this chance, like, is there a high chance that I really can lose everything? Or are you really helping guide me to the point where, it's almost like risk-free?
Yeah, never. There's a risk in everything, right? So I'll answer that in a second. So with employment, you have the risk of, as I mentioned before, a merger. I worked for 3 large investment firms, all went through mergers, ironically. Just couldn't have asked for crazier luck, or bad luck, I should say. I guess we could look at it, good luck or bad luck. So there is a risk. It's one revenue stream, one income stream. And now you're blindly investing in a 401k that's also not managed by you, that you can't control. So I talk about, you can leave your job or actually taking a step back, keep your job and find a franchise. So you can actually keep your job, run the franchise on the side. Not every franchise allows that.
I noticed that you mentioned that on your website. I saw that you said there were certain franchises where there's completely hands-on and completely hands-off.
Correct.
It sounds like it would be pretty desirable to take one that was hands-off. You know what I mean? To me, that would sound like investing in a franchise. I feel like if you're opening it, it's almost like, you're there, you're grinding every day. But if you're investing in it, it's, here's some money. Come on, guys, make this one work. That sounds like an investment to me. Why wouldn't you want to take that option?
It's more, right. It's more hands-off. We call it more on the semi-absentee. So maybe it's 10 to 20 hours a week, obviously in the beginning stages, and maybe a little bit more as you're going through training and getting the business up and running. But there's franchises that have to approve that. Some franchise companies do require the franchisees to be full-time, being an owner operator in the business. But there are other businesses that are built for that. They don't expect you to do the end product or service. They train you in hiring an empowered employee. They train you in hiring a general manager, even to the point where some will actually help you find that general manager. So the investment, when you look at a franchise, the range will be a little bit higher, since you need to factor in that employee that will almost be replacing you, but will allow you to keep your job. And then maybe after the first 6 months to a year, you can transition full-time. Going back to your previous question, there's always a risk, right? There's a risk in business ownership as there is with employment. I worked in the investment world, mutual funds, there's a risk there as well. So how do we minimize the risk? And the biggest way to minimize it is number one, buying the right franchise. Simple as that sounds, right? We sometimes get so excited about a brand or a product. I really like their coffee. I really like their sandwiches. And I just dive right in, not knowing what the business entails. What is the franchisee's role and things like that. So they go about it incorrectly, as I did myself before working with a franchise coach and advisor, which is, you know, what I do today. So finding the right franchise. Number two, which is the silliest thing, and it's unfortunate that I have to even say this, but following the system, right? So maybe you find that right franchise. We're working together and we find you a mosquito spraying franchise, and then you don't follow the system. You have this grand plan of running it a completely different way. Maybe you're hiring 1099s versus W-2s. Maybe your friend has another formulation and things like that. And I tell people, if you're not going to follow the system, don't bother with the franchise. Why pay those fees? Pay the fees and then not follow the system. Just have your own startup, and handle it that way. So right. There's definitely risk involved in any business. A franchise is a proven business model, but the key is not every franchise is built the same. And that's where I bring value to the table and have the people looking at franchises ask those difficult questions. How long have you been in business? How much support am I getting? Not just in the very beginning stage, but ongoing. So I coach you with the right questions because most people I talk to have never owned the business before.
My one question that I was actually really excited to ask you is, have you owned any franchises before, and like which ones, and how were they?
Yeah, so they was back in 2007, and I actually bought 2 territories. I was a master franchisee for a commercial cleaning and building maintenance franchise. So definitely I've owned non-franchise, was in the restaurant industry with my family, and I've owned franchises as a master franchisee. There's a lot more coaching and things like that involved. So I got to experience both ends, franchise, non-franchise. I think, again, one is not better than the other. It's based off the fit. And never in my life, I'm a former Wall Street guy. I was thinking restaurants because I thought all franchises were restaurants. Subway, Quiznos, they were all pretty big back then. And the coach I work with said, well, you want something that has an annuity, right, where people are coming to you every single month, that's recession resistant. Being a former investor, Wall Street guy, I said, yeah, I don't want it to be a fad. And if the economy goes south, which is what we saw coming, I want something that will be relevant. There will always be a demand. And we got into commercial, not so much residential, nothing wrong with that. But we got into commercial because we were cleaning surgery centers, dialysis centers. So I figured no matter what happened, there's always going to be a demand for, obviously, people's health. And nurses and doctors are not going to disinfect the entire hospital.
All right. Okay, cool. So a random question that I was kind of thinking also was, is it like, how difficult is it to open like a McDonald's or a Wendy's? Just like, a chain that like everyone kind of knows, you see everywhere. I feel like they're like 2 of the leaders. Can anyone just kind of open that? So with a franchise, so this is a lot of what we do and working with our candidates, big investment. So, in many cases, you may have the money or you have to get approved via funding. How much money is it typically?
You're looking at for some of those name brands, $500,000 plus. It's been a while since we worked with them, but it depends on the build outs. And then when you look at investment, it's more than just franchise fee. Then you have to factor in, some people factor in 6 months living expense. Some people factor in employees, and there's a lot of employees involved, given 7 days a week, McDonald's and Burger Kings and things like that. So much larger investment. And more importantly, you need to get approved by the franchisor. So everyone I work with and bring to the table, we tell them that when you're speaking with the franchisor, it's not just you have the money and the territories available. So that's another thing. We want to make sure that there's a territory availability. The franchisor has to feel it's a good fit. So those are the big names. That's what most people think of with franchising. And yes, it is difficult to get approved. And in many cases, not that it's easier, but the investment is relatively lower, especially in something service-based where you're working from home and you're able to operate maybe from your laptop from home. Okay.
All right. So I'll keep in mind that those are expensive. Can you name a franchise off the top of your head that this might interest someone that you would be able to open with maybe just like a $50,000 investment?
Yeah. So it depends. it depends on funding options, but typically SBA loans, you'll put down a percentage. So maybe in that, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to funding. But so with that being said, maybe the 50,000 is a down payment, and then there's another loan for another 50, and assuming that there's some liquidity there, so that person has a living expense if the business doesn't take off right away. But typically, it would be a service-based business. So now we're not looking at a physical location like the corner of Arnold Ave and Bay in Point Pleasant. It's going to be all of Ocean County. I'm just making this up. And then you're able to do business in that area and provide a service. You may or may not need a small office. You can probably work from home, and you can provide that service anywhere in the county. It may be mosquito spraying. It may be a power washing or painting service, holiday lighting, and things like that. So what we've seen during COVID is a lot of demand for home services. So we've relatively low investment, no brick and mortar, no build outs, not much inventory. Maybe some small things. You need some equipment to get started. But we've seen that as a lower investment, lots of demand, large territories that potentially get into a reoccurring revenue stream.
Okay. Well, so I guess it sounds like you kind of at least need to have like $100,000 to open or invest in franchise. That sound about right?
Yeah, I would. You want to. They look at, so franchisor, will look at net worth, liquidity. So they want to make sure that if you go a loan route like the SBA, there are various routes, you have enough for the down payment, and then keeping in mind you are going to make typically their 10-year low interest loans. So they'll look at, you have enough for the down payment, great. What is the loan amount? It's $1,000 a month, just say, and then we look at living expense. So if you're have a partner in the business, or if you're on your own, if you're married, your spouse, your partner, whoever's going to be involved, if their income can offset the living expense, then you're ahead of the game. But if you're on your own, you have to factor in, okay, this is my rent, this is my utilities. So between the note and everything, it's $5,000 a month. Do I have 6 months? Do I have 30,000 living expense aside while being able to fund the business as well? So franchisors, as well as the funding companies, will put together pro formas to make sure that they set you up for success. And sometimes that means instead of buying 3 territories of a franchise, maybe we look at 1 to start, and then from the cash flow and the proceeds, then we start to grow slowly over the years. So the franchisor wants you to be successful, and they want to make sure that you're capitalized, you have the funding, and you're not going to be worried after month 1 you have a slow month that you're going to have to file for bankruptcy. So they want to make sure you have proper funding. And I will say, a lot of these service-based, home-based businesses, believe it or not, you are up and running in anywhere from 30 to 60 days. So in many cases, while you're in training, a lot of the companies will actually be marketing for you, obtaining scheduling for you, getting you customers, such as with mosquito spraying. And in as little as 30 days, you're up and running with customers. So you're not waiting a year like a brick and mortar, like a McDonald's, with the build out and the site locations and everything. You sign the franchise agreement, and literally a month, 30 days later, you could be up and running.
Okay. Well, wow. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. I feel like I've asked you so many questions now. So do you have any other questions or anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I think, in what we do, we and I, by the way, I really appreciate this. And some of your questions are great, because it's like, okay, well, I never thought of, something as simple as opening versus and investing in a franchise. In the 15 years I've been doing this, never truly crossed my mind. So I greatly appreciate that. I learn every day. So, the biggest takeaway is that you don't need millions of dollars to buy a franchise. I am here to educate you every step of the way. I'm with you. I work with you. I coach you every step of the way. Consider me more as an advisor. I have the knowledge, and a lot of people discount or don't look at business ownership because they have these preconceived notions that I need all this money, that it's all only fast food. So I encourage anyone. I offer a 20-minute free introductory call to anyone that has any questions, or they just thought about it. during COVID, they got to work from home. I just spoke with a family member last night, and that person's going back into work into Philadelphia. And now they're like, you know what? I don't want to go back into the city, whether it's New York or whatever city you're in. What other routes do I have? And business ownership, franchise ownership can definitely be a route. So, I would say you owe it to yourself to work with, or at least look into franchise ownership. Our services are free. I forgot to mention that as well. We're like a real estate agent. When you're looking for a home, you don't pay the realtor. The seller pays that realtor. So, whether you use someone like myself or go direct to the franchise company, you always pay the exact same amount. We find you the right franchise based off of what is important to you, not the product or service you're excited about. So we look at what's your role in the business, the territory, the investment, and there's literally 30 characteristics that we look at in each business. So I think you owe it to yourself to pick up the phone, send me an email, and let's explore. Let me answer your questions. And it may not be a good fit, full disclosure. It may be a startup, or maybe, hey, you may want to keep your job because what you're looking for maybe doesn't exist. I just got a call the other day. You talked about risk. Is franchise ownership, is that guaranteed money? And I said, no, I would own all of them if that were the case. So there's definitely a risk in what we do, but it's finding the right fit for you, the right franchise, doing your due diligence. And I assist. So with anyone that I work with, I also send them out a free copy of my book, Franchise Freedom. It's a exactly 30-minute read. I read it last weekend and time myself. So it's a 30-minute quick read. It'll give you it'll ask you the right questions, and you can do the due diligence on your own after reading that book. You're armed with a lot of the things we talk about. It doesn't take so much of a deep dive, but if you wanted to arm yourself with that, read the book. I send it out for free. It doesn't cost you anything but 30 minutes. And why go it alone? And then contact me afterwards, and we can do a deep dive. And more important than anything else, figure out if franchise ownership is the right fit before spending hundreds of hours doing your own due diligence. So check it out. You can keep your job and own a franchise. You could do it full-time. You could do it part-time. There's tons of options, 4,000 franchises in every industry, every investment level. So if you go directly to my website, GG, my initials, The Franchise Guide, GUIDE, so ggthefranchiseguide.com /book, or just click on the book link. You could download, you have full access to my book. My website also has a schedule link, so you can just schedule a quick call with me. It doesn't cost you anything. So between the book, 30-minute read, and the first call, it's an hour investment of your time to really figure out if this is the avenue that's right for you. So I encourage everyone listening in to send me an email, and let's get on a call.
Call this man.
Really appreciate it. These are some really good questions, and I'm glad we brought this up, and looking forward to the next conversation. But anyone listening in, comment, get on the website, send me a direct message, and be more than glad to answer any questions you may have.